Hello and welcome to this video, which is our next in our series about employment. Today we're going to talk about CV writing, and again we're here with Zsuzsi from Support for Sight in Essex, who, as I said before, has a wealth of experience around employment.
Hi Zsuzsi, how are you?
Hi Colin, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
Nice to
So
see you again.
it is great to see you again. It's our next video, and today we're going to be chatting about CVs.
Great.
It's a very important subject. It's the place where we all start, really, when we're starting to look for work, isn't it?
Definitely.
So I suppose we should ask the simple question right at the beginning, which is, what's a CV?
So I think the CV, in my opinion, is your achievement up until maybe the day when you sit down and do your CV. It should include everything that you have done, you have achieved, you have gained up until that point. And it's a document that basically your first selling point to an employer. So it has to be very good and just a very thought out document.
So what kind of things really should you include in it?
So I think definitely your name would be good and your contact details. These days, I advise my clients not to include their full address. It doesn't really matter. So maybe an email address, a mobile number, and a county or a town you live in is absolutely enough. You don't necessarily want the whole world know where you live exactly. And in terms of the segments, I would have personal profile, employment history, education history, hobbies and interests, and maybe just a little section of references just to say that those are available. Sometimes it's good to have key skills or key achievement. Again, CV is a very individual thing. So what is depending on the client. So if they have done a lot and they had loads of employment in the past, then maybe I would focus on their employment history. If we're talking about somebody who's a young person and maybe only had a job or they never actually worked, then obviously I would put down case skills, and various other things. But
Okay,
these are kind of the basics I would
the
tackle.
basics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you mentioned education there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just aware that some people, are maybe looking for work when they're getting a bit older, a bit like myself,
Yeah.
into 40s. So, what about qualifications? What kind of qualifications should we put down on the CV?
I think anything that you have actually gained is a good thing. I don't necessarily advise my client to put down education that they currently undertaking because you haven't achieved it. That could be maybe something you can mention in your personal profile that currently you are studying, but anything that's maybe relevant to the job. So if you're looking for an admin job and you have, I don't know, something to do, some qualification regarding IT, then absolutely, obviously, please put it down. But if you, I don't know, maybe over the age of 40, putting down GCSEs is not really relevant. Obviously, the employer advertising the job with some basic education, like must have A levels or must have a degree or must have GCSE in a certain subject, those you have to put down, but you don't necessarily have to go back and put every single thing down. And also there is education and under training. There are a couple of qualifications that expire
Hmm.
with time. So if it's not valid anymore, like a first aid certificate, which usually is, I believe, is valid for a year, and you gained it 5 years ago, it's no point to put down you had it because it's not relevant at all.
Okay, great. And I suppose that moves on to work history as well, because if you've had sort of lots of jobs with lots of
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities, then it can get, you could it could turn into a bit of a book, couldn't it? So,
Definitely.
so how long should a CV be, and kind of what
I
work
Sorry.
history should you kind of put into it?
Yeah, it shouldn't be more than 2 pages. That's kind of the average. And you should include your last couple of jobs. So, again, depending from person to person, but maybe your last 10 years of employment history or your last two jobs at least. And in terms of what to put down, even if you've done the same job, let's say you were an admin person all your life and that's the kind of job you are applying for, what I advise my clients, instead of repeating the same things under your employment history in terms of your roles and responsibilities, what I encourage them to do is let's think about maybe 20 things you have done in your working life, and then put down maybe 10 for one of the jobs and 10 for maybe the second job. But don't repeat the same skills or responsibilities, because what you want to show an employer is a skill set rather than just being really good at a particular thing.
Yeah. And what about just sort of if you've been the primary parent, so do you need to include that? So maybe there might be a gap
Yeah,
in your work
yeah,
history.
of course. I mean, being a parent, I think, is pretty hard, and people don't realize how many things you have to kind of do, and just you do being a parent. So being organized, being reliable, all of those things count. And even if you if you were a carer for a family member, that's you weren't sitting at home doing nothing, you were busy doing something else. So yeah, definitely put down 100% include those things.
Okay, you've mentioned a couple of times now about personal profiles. So what's a personal profile?
So the personal profile is basically a little bit of a summary about you as a person regarding employment. And I think the personal profile is the crucial element where you will be obviously picked up for an interview. What I advise my clients to do is rewrite their personal profile for every single CV that they will submit to an employer and make it relevant to that employer. So one of the things that really not going to get you a job is if you call your CV, let's say my CV, and if you maybe in 2020 you send a CV out to an employer called my CV 2019. So the first advice I would give is for every time you send a CV or a cover letter or an application form or anything to an employer, make sure you rename the document. The document should be renamed, telling the employer who you are, what job you're applying for, and what the date that you are applying for, and you can also put their details in. Okay. And so when the employer is putting an advert out, they're going to put some skills, knowledge, qualification that they're looking for in their ideal candidate. I call those things buzzwords. I don't know if that hopefully makes sense to everybody. So the employer will say we're looking for somebody who's hardworking, has 2 years experience, reliable, willing to learn, whatever is their requirements, their Christmas list, their buzz list.
Yeah.
And what you need to make sure that your personal profile is reflecting those words.
Right.
And the employer is clearly understanding that this CV is your CV, you sending it to me for this job, and everything I asked for in the advert, you are telling me that you are those people,
It
you are
shows you've
that
done your
person.
homework, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It needs to be individualized for each employer. So when people say to me, I applied for 100 jobs in the last 2 weeks, I always ask them, and how many times you rewrote that
That's
particular
a really good question. Yeah.
particular segment, the personal profile, because if the employer is asking for, I don't know, A, B, C, D, and on your personal profile you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you're not going to be relevant to them. So you have to understand what the requirements are, and just basically tell them, I am everything that you're asking for.
That's that's such good advice. I think it's so
And
important to do.
rewriting your personal profile, once you get into the method and the rhythm and the habit of applying for jobs and doing your CV, once you get into that, rewriting your personal profile for every job should be only a matter of minutes. Renaming the documents again
Yeah.
should be a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
So in let's say in 10 minutes you can make yourself more relevant to the employer. And the other thing you kind of need to think about, I guess, is when you're sending things like my CV and CVs with the wrong date and the wrong year and the wrong job, just think about how many exactly the same the employer will receive. So you kind of want to
Absolutely.
stand out and tell them exactly who you are and why do you think you are relevant for this job. So
Yeah.
that's something I would definitely do. And what I wouldn't do, I wouldn't go into anything in terms of what your hopes are, what your dreams are, why you applied. I think that's for the cover letter. So I think the CV is very basically, this is what I've done up until
Yeah.
yesterday, and I am the best person for this job because I understand what you're looking for and I have those skills knowledge, experience, whatever you want to call it.
Well, we're going to do a video on cover letters as well, so we can talk about
Great.
that, which is great. As part of the personal profile, obviously we're talking about people with sight loss. So in your CV, do you think it's worth mentioning your sight loss?
I wouldn't mention it. No, I don't think it's a good idea. We talked about it, and we talk about it later on about disclosing. I think again, just going back to um, the basic fact that and it's no point to deny that that's how it is. Most people wouldn't necessarily understand the disability. They might have some assumptions about it, and they might think, oh my god, this is somebody with a visual impairment, how are they going to do this? But once they see you, once you walk into a room, once your personality come across and you have the chance to have an interview and have a chat to them about your disability, they can potentially and hopefully, and obviously it happens, they have a better idea and they less judgmental. But on a piece of paper, it's just, I don't know, it's just it can halve your chances of having an interview, and there's no point to deny it. It is the facts.
I think it's as you say, it's important not to you know to actually have a face-to-face conversation about your sight loss. It's
Or as we discussed before you go for the interview, give them a call, say, oh, thank you for the interview. This
Yeah.
is what I have. This is the kind of reasonable adjustment I would like to be in place
Yeah.
in order to take to do the interview, and that's absolutely fine.
Okay, so what about these various job sites? You know, we see them on the TV and hear them on the radio telling us to upload our CV and it will really help us get a job. So what are your thoughts on uploading CVs onto various job sites?
I'm not really a big fan of them for various reasons. So it hasn't really worked well for my client group at all, kind of ever. Those jobs usually advertised by employers when they want somebody to come in tomorrow, start tomorrow, and kind of hit the ground running and be able to perform straight away. Obviously with our clients, they do need access to work, they need a little bit of support, reasonable adjustment, so that can obviously take time. So it wouldn't necessarily work for my clients. The other thing I know that some of these websites encouraging the public to advertise positions. So for example, if you go out to a shopping centre and you see an advertisement in the window, if you take a picture of that and you send it into this website, then in return you get some vouchers for a company that will deliver to your house. I wouldn't like to say which one it is. So not all the jobs are actually valid. They're not really relevant, and
Right.
and it's not advertised by the employer necessary to that extent. So I don't know. I think it's just a little bit of a waste of time to putting them on. But if somebody choose to do it, by all means,
Yeah.
feel free to do it. And then please take my advice on not sharing your full address and put down telephone numbers and email addresses. That obviously doesn't mean people can track you down, but don't even put your house number down on your CV. But I don't think they work. In the very first video, we talked about my experience. So I've been doing this for 14 years, and so far I only had one client in 14 years who I know has got a job
Job
through one of
through
these
uploading.
websites.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not.
Okay.
I think employers will always advertise their positions, maybe on their website, and we will talk about job searching. I know of, so I will obviously explain how to look and where to look and how to kind of get the most opportunities, or as much opportunities as you can. But putting them on the website. Or various job seeking website, I think, unless you just after I don't know, 2 weeks job somewhere where you don't need anything, then it's fine. But other than that, not really.
So we've sort of covered everything really, I think. So what are your top tips then, as we're doing top tips on all these videos?
Okay, so top tips: always rename your document or your CV to the employer, to that particular job. Even put the reference number in and make sure it has your name and it tells the employer what document you are attaching to your email. That's definitely number one top tip. Do rewrite your personal profile. Make sure that you are relevant to the employer, and look out for the buzzwords within the advert and make sure you're using those words. keep it to 2 pages, and make sure your responsibilities under the employment history is again relevant to the job, and you're showing as many responsibilities, previous responsibilities in your previous jobs as you can, and don't repeat words. Don't just kind of have the same things over and over again.
Excellent. Well, that's really good. I think that's a really helpful bunch of top tips there.
Thank
So
you.
that's great. So actually the next video we're going to record is on cover letters. So that
Great.
so both CVs and cover letters go beautifully together. So thanks for this, Zsuzsi, and we'll
You're
have a chat
welcome.
about cover letters on the next video.
Okay, bye, Colin. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
So as you can see, a CV is so important, crucial in either finding work or moving on with your career. So keeping it up to date is essential. If you want any more information about CV writing, you can contact me through the usual way, through the Advice and Information Service on 0300 30 30 111, or through the Working Age and Young People's Facebook group. We'll leave a link to that below in the description. This video, as always, will be on our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to and get notifications as new videos come up. So goodbye, and we'll catch you on the next one.